Welcome back to Tonight with Tim Modise. The Eskom inquiry that is run by a parliamentary ad hoc committee has uncovered damning information that links the Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown to interference in the running of Eskom and to President Jacob Zuma in the suspension of top executives at the state-owned entity. Links have also been made to the Gupta family and associates. The inquiry is being held to investigate the state of affairs at the biggest state-owned company. Billions of rands are required to get Eskom out of the morass. Eskom is central to the country's economy and is currently in trouble, and this will require additional funding from the taxpayers as well as the electricity consumers. But how did we get here? And why was Eskom allowed to be abused? Thabang Motsohi of Lenomo Strategic Advisory is my guest, and he's here to share thoughts with me. Mr. Motsohi, pleasure to have you with you.
It's a pleasure, Tim. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah. So the inquiry is continuing. A lot of information is coming out of that inquiry. Some of it suspected, but now confirmed. And it's taken a lot of people by surprise that this kind of information is emerging. In a sense, it's placing Eskom at the center of state capture. Were you as shocked or taken aback as many people are with the revelations that are emerging from there?
Well, Tim, I wasn't that much shocked because a lot of the stuff that is coming out has been, put into the public arena by the media in the past year or two. What we needed to do was to get the people that were involved inside the organization, put in some veneer of credibility on some of those claims that were made, or publications that were made in the media. And we're beginning to see that. But for me, I think there's a bigger problem here. The problem is around the concept of accountability. That is lacking in all state enterprises, and particularly so in the biggest state enterprise and the most important, because it's a catalyst for economic development. The way we have run Eskom in the past couple of years, and our attitude to it does not really convince one that we really mean to have an efficient catalyst for economic development in South Africa. Eskom plays a critical part. And organizations like that, state-owned enterprises like that, are always used by states, by governments, to make sure that they can, for instance, pioneer development in areas where the private sector would find it difficult to invest. Now, Eskom is one of those. For you or for us to really achieve that objective, you need a highly efficient enterprise to do that, well run by professionals,
yes,
with the highest level of accountability standards that you can ever find.
But I suppose many of the people who worked for Eskom in the past are top professionals themselves. To my mind, what is emerging from this inquiry is that there is a lot of political interference there, and that political interference seems to have nothing to do with the catalytic objectives, development of the country, but more with people making money out of the organization and in the process placing pressure on the skills required to run this entity efficiently.
Absolutely. The problem is one of governance, and we've been missing it for a few decades now in many state-owned enterprises. It always starts at the level of the board. The demarcation of roles between the shareholder and the board has always been problematic. We've not been able to put in a Chinese wall between the two to ensure that, when you've recruited a credible board with people that have the competence in the area, then they are given free hand to do what must be done. That's what Eskom actually has needed. It has behaved in that way in the past, but it has deteriorated completely in the past few years. Now, we need to reverse that quickly. But I don't think that reversal can be achieved until we have an intervention to make sure that we nip what has been revealed in the bud by way of a judicial commission of inquiry. We have an excellent exercise now taking place in Parliament, you know, the inquiry, we had a lot last night about what has been happening. But what they really want is a judicial commission of inquiry.
But then, that is what the public protector said already last year,
Yes.
right? And it hasn't happened. So in a way, the initiative in Parliament is a good one, because it does bring to the fore the urgency of this judicial commission of inquiry that you're talking about.
The only problem is that, you know, all that this inquiry is achieving now is to raise our anxieties. Consequences are going to be very few coming out of that.
You reckon?
This is my belief, and some have happened. What you really need is something that reflects our attitude towards ESCOM.
Yes.
We are lacking that from a policy level point of view. If our attitude is one that says this is a very critical organization in our development agenda profile, then we have to make sure that we clean it up. That commission of inquiry, which has been promised now for quite some time, should happen, even if it is highly focused to ESCOM at the present moment. But it must happen as a matter of urgency.
There's the interim problem of funding, right? Because the entity is in financial trouble. It was given bailouts, guarantees in the past, 23 billion. Municipalities also owe it money, and the consumers are not paying. So, and right now it's one of the most highly indebted entities. What needs to happen then going forward?
I think there's been, you know, there have been quite a lot of ideas about how ESCOM should be restructured. Okay, let's go back, for instance, to the current structure of ESCOM. It's a conglomerate where you have generation and transmission under one roof. Under such circumstances, you have what you call, you know, conglomerate discount. What you need to do really is to separate these two activities, put them under their own organizations with accountable boards and structure to run them independently. Of course, the one will be supplying, you know, power through the other, but it will be on clearly defined terms, business terms. This matter has been, you know, I think in principle, from a policy level, agreed about 10 years ago, but we've done nothing about it. Now, the second thing is that you know, it is a heavily geared organization. Lenders are naturally looking at it with extreme concern at this point in time. But what makes it worse is the context. The context within which all these things are happening is such that we have very low economic growth, almost non-existent, and the prospects for a turnaround are not going to be bright, at least for the next 5 years.
I want a brief, quick comment from you as we conclude. What about the fact that even the president seems to be implicated in this, if we go by Mr. Zola Tsotzi's evidence, testimony of the past couple of days?
Tim, that really got many of us, if not the whole country, worried. And there's only one way to clear that up. Let's have an urgent commission of inquiry, a judicial commission of inquiry, which will clear the air. We need to save ESCOM. There is no doubt about that. As you know, we also need to save quite a number of others that are critical and that are actually, you know, depending on the public purse for survival. You cannot depend on debt for running a business. You cannot depend on debt forever, you know, for your working capital. They have to generate the cash that you need. So there's a whole complexity of things that have to be gotten right to make sure that ESCOM and many others can survive, generate the cash themselves, and be able to be responsible and meet their own debts. That will require restructuring, but it also requires a complete overhaul of the governance structure.
And of course, this will help ESCOM make its contribution to the growth of the economy without taking money from the public purse. Mr. Thabang Motsohi, thank you very much for having been our guest.
It's a pleasure, Tim. Thank you very much.
Well, this is how we come to the end of the show tonight, and we hope you found it very informative and you took something away from it. Thank you from us. Good night to you.